Well, first up, provisional estimates from the Ghana Statistical Service shows that Ghana's economy expanded by 3.1% in 2022, 0.6% lower than 3.7% forecast by the government. Now, this is below government's average gross domestic product growth rate of 5.0% pre-COVID-19. It met most analysts' forecasts as the African Development Bank in January 2023 had projected that Ghana's economy would grow by 3.6%. Now, the service sector led growth, followed by agriculture and industry, which recorded a growth rate of 0.9%. Here's government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnenim addressing the media a while ago.
The value of the economy in 2021 was 174 billion relative to 179.9 billion from an all-inclusive perspective, taking into consideration all the 3 sectors and all the 22 subsectors. The value of the economy when you discount for the effect of oil in 2021 stood at 162.9 billion relative to 169.1 billion in 2022. And when you discount for the effect of gold in 2021, the value of the economy was 168.6 million relative to 172.1 million for 2022. From a constant perspective, we estimate the growth rate for the economy between 2021 and 2022. In 2021, the economy grew by 5.1%. That is between 2020 and 2021, Ghana's economy saw a growth rate of 5.1%. This growth rate dipped by 2.0 percentage points for the period 2021 to 2022. For the period 2021 to 2022, comparing the values of the economy, which stood at 174.6 billion and 179.9 billion, the economy grew by 3.1% between the period 2021 and 2022. From a non-oil perspective, the economy grew by 3.8%, which also indicates a slowdown of about 2.8 percentage points, as the economy grew by 6.6% between 2020 and 2021, and now saw a growth rate of 3.8% between 2021 and 2022. From a non-gold perspective, we see a much harder impact on the economy. So if you discount for the effect of the economy, in 2021, the economy grew by 7.1% from a non-gold perspective. That is, if you take away the effect of gold, the economy grew by 7.1%. In the period 2020 and 2021, but between the period 2021 and 2022, we saw a much harder impact on the economy, where the economy grew by 2.1% between 2021 and 2022.
All right, JoyNews' data analyst Isaac Kofieje has been looking through the statistics released by the Ghana Statistical Service. He's here to give us a breakdown, and so we know that the services sector led growth, followed by agri and then industry. Tell us a bit more about what you're reading from the Statistical Services release.
Right, so I'm looking at the trend analysis currently, and this is the growth rate after a very pacey, growth recorded in 2021. We were all expecting the economy to be on a very good trajectory after a growth rate of 0.5% in 2022. 2021 recorded 5.1%. That was very significant, looking at where we left off in 2020. And then now we see some sort of a decline, and the economy heading south from the 5.1 to 3.1. So on the trajectory, you can see a decline from what we recorded in 2021 to just 3.1% in 2022. I'm also looking at the sectoral, breakdown, and as of now, the GDP at basic price is around 571 billion Ghana cedis. If you convert to dollars, it would be around some $6 billion. And the services sector is still, accounting for one of the biggest portion of this 571 billion GDP that we're talking about. It's around 44.9%, although it has declined from the share that they held in 2021. Agri is now around 20.9%. And the rest of the pie goes to the industrial sector, which is around 34.2%. I am also looking at GDP growth rate of about 8 countries that have still been released at the moment. And we have about 5 countries recording growth rates higher than that of Ghana. So Mauritius, for instance, has a growth rate of 8.7%, Rwanda 8.2%, Botswana 5.8%, Namibia 4.6%. So all these countries have recorded growth rates above that of Ghana. Now we see in West Africa, Ghana and Nigeria actually recorded the same growth rate, Ghana 3.1, Nigeria 3.1. However, we have about two countries actually recording growth rate below that of Ghana. That is Tunisia 2.4% and South Africa 2.0%.
All right, Isaac, thank you so much. That information helpful. Joining us to make more sense of the data released by the Ghana Statistical Service is economist and director at the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Professor Peter Quartey. Good afternoon. Great to have you. So 2022 was quite a tough year. And so this level of growth expected, or am I just being modest?
Well, good afternoon to your discerning listeners and viewers. Yes, this is not what we expected, but it's certainly lower than what we should expect. But we knew given the challenges we went through in the last quarter of 2022, this is likely to happen. Because if you saw the exchange rate depreciation, you saw what was happening on the price build-up, as well as even fuel price increases, general cost of doing business, as well as the general uncertainty in the last quarter of 2022. This IMF program, debt exchange, generally there was higher uncertainty on the market, and therefore, as investors, as industry, they couldn't plan to invest as much as they could. Demand pressures were not as high as one would have expected. So that translated into the slower growth rates that we saw.
And industry took a big hit in 2022. We understand because of the challenges, but the figures are very disappointing, especially as the government was pursuing an industrialization agenda. Your thoughts?
Yes, the industrialization policies were there, but of course, as a business person, if you want to produce, if you want to market your product, you also have to take cognizance of what is happening on the market. If exchange rate was depreciating quite rapidly, if the interest rate were rising, if electricity, utility tariffs, fuel prices were going up, inflation, look at how rapidly inflation kept changing. So there were a lot of market uncertainty. And as an investor, despite all the policies that government was trying to put in place, this would affect your decision to invest, to produce. And even if you produce, demand for your product can also be affected, given the general economic conditions. So in my view, it is very much expected.
Any recovery in sight for industry, and how soon? How can we pick up quickly?
Yes, certainly the need for recovery is key. We would hopefully, if we're able to sign on to the IMF program, but that's not the main thing. It's necessary, but not the sufficient conditions. Getting onto an IMF program is not sufficient. Also doing the right things, investing in the right places and ensuring macro stability. I believe when there is stability, when the exchange rate is stable, when inflation is not increasing or increasing rapidly, when the market is stable, when fuel prices are stable or lower, when general cost of doing business is reasonable, investors will kick in and recovery is likely to come. I mean, we went through COVID and you saw how we recovered quickly from COVID. So once we put in the right places, I believe we'll bounce back.
And your thoughts on how Agric fared? I thought it was quite impressive looking at where we are coming from. And how can we maximize on the gains made in that sector?
Yes, Agric is being quite resilient. Even in times of COVID, we saw the growth in agriculture. Of course, the planting for food and jobs and other policies are helping, but there's a lot of room for improvement if we really want to maximize the gains from Agric. They need to ensure that there's much more irrigation instead of relying on rain-fed agriculture. They need to ensure that we mechanize. They need to ensure that we add value to agricultural products and also supporting the value chain. So it's not just producing. If you support them with inputs and there is a glut, the following year they will not invest. But if you support them through the value chain, production, marketing, storage, etc., I believe that will be a long-term solution to promoting the agricultural sector. It's been resilient, and I think we should do a bit more to ensure that that sector is really accelerated in terms of its growth outcomes.
And I want us to talk a bit about the services sector, which is leading growth right now. What are the advantages and disadvantages to us that the service sector is leading growth?
Well, the advantages, if you look at ICT, for instance, is growing quite well. You saw hotel, tourism. That is good. I mean, we are diversifying. So our advantage is that there's diversity. We are not relying on one sector, like Nigeria that relies quite significantly on oil. We are diversifying services, even manufacturing. But the disadvantage is that we are not investing in high value services. A lot of them goes into retail and other areas that do not provide sustainable jobs. So as we promote the services sector, we need to also invest in high value services as well as invest more in manufacturing. Otherwise, we promote more of services and we continue to import food that will not inure to our benefit. Let's note that agri employs a greater proportion of our labor force. Agri contributes significantly to our GDP. So we shouldn't promote services at the expense of manufacturing, at the expense of agriculture. Otherwise, we'll be import dependent, and that has repercussions on inflation, imported inflation. It has repercussions on exchange rates and many other things. And even employment. Once you import a lot, you are not creating jobs. And we have a teeming youth that requires jobs. So we need to really diversify and ensure that we create the necessary jobs that are required for our educated sector.
Okay, and I know there's a lot of excitement in the system following the progress we've made with securing an IMF deal, but how optimistic are you about recovery now that we've made some headway?
Yes, I am optimistic, but I say, again, as I said, it's a necessary condition, but not sufficient. That is not the only thing. Once we do the right things, we sign on to the IMF program and do the right things, certainly we'll do better. There will be stability, we'll have confidence restored. Let's be guided that in 2017, 2018, we were under an IMF program and the economy thrived quite significantly. So for me, I'm very optimistic that if we sign on to the program and we are able to cut down our expenditure and make sure we get value for money in terms of spending, raise revenue, we are good to go. We'll restore stability, we'll restore the economy back on track for accelerated growth.
Well, so based on these figures, if you're to advise the government on the way forward in terms of policy, what would that be?
Macro stability is key, in my view. Aside from everything, we need macro stability. What we can do to ensure that there is exchange rate stability, so we don't over-rely on imports, but also promote the import substitution industries. What can we do to add value to our manufactured products? What can we do to add value to agricultural products so that we don't depend too much on import? At the moment, there is quite a lot going on with Bank of Ghana supporting the forest market with foreign exchange, as well as some of the things that are the Gold for Oil program, and everything that can be done within the remits of government to ensure exchange rate stability. That is great. What government can do to ensure inflation doesn't escalate. We don't record rapid inflation rates, but rather slower rate of inflation. That will be good. Then also when you come to cost of doing business itself, the high taxes, I mean, if you are introducing taxes, we should ensure that these taxes will bring in the needed revenue. We should do some background checks, research, impact analysis to ensure that we do not hurt critical sectors of the economy. Otherwise, we introduce too many taxes with the aim of raising revenue. We might not end up raising the revenue, but rather hurting critical sectors of the economy. So I believe all of this are key, but ensuring macro stability in terms of exchange rate, inflation, interest rates will go a long way to ensure that businesses are able to plan, they're able to produce and employ more people.
All right. I appreciate your insights and perspective, Professor Peter Korte, economist, also director at the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research. Grateful for your time. Well, the Ghana Revenue Authority says it is poised to execute its mandate after President Akufo-Addo gave assent to the new tax measures. My colleague, Blaise Sugar, is covering the After Business Forum in South Africa and has been speaking with the Deputy Commissioner, Suspense Regimes at the Customs Division of the GRA, Emmanuel Ohene.
I believe that for us as a division of the GRA, we strive every day to ensure that we can provide the best services in the area of assurances for revenue collection and public health and safety. We have deployed a tool that is robust and dynamic, and so since 2020 we have sought to improve upon what measures we can introduce in ensuring that our mandate for trade facilitation, for revenue generation and protection and public health and safety is achieved. And so whenever there are new taxes that are introduced, we are poised to ensure that the mandate government has given us is achieved, and we strive to do that with a lot of improvements in the way we do business, especially in the area of digitalization. I would like to mention that we now have what you call the authorized economic operators, which is one of the pillars of the World Customs Organization and the World Trade Organization, where we intend to ensure that compliant traders or trusted traders have little or minimum customs control over their activities. And so once a trusted trader has the accreditation from Customs Division, you're able to import your goods into the country without any interferences from customs. And these are some of the initiatives we have sought to introduce to ensure that we can encourage compliant traders and discourage those who are non-compliant.
So your message to businesses that may be contemplating, avoiding, or is it evading the tax measures that are being newly, the recently introduced ones? What message do you have for those businesses?
We will say that in the wisdom of the government, these taxes were introduced to ensure that our country can attain the levels we all aspire to see. And for us as a division of the GRA, and as GRA, we will strive to carry out our mandate without fear or favor to ensure that the right things are done. We need to build a robust society, and societies are built on the taxes that we pay. And for us in GRA, we'll do every possible best to ensure that we collect the taxes according to the mandate given to us. Thank you.
But revenue leakage, finally, may be a challenge as well. Some say, well, it's not just about getting what you have, it's also about, consolidating and sustaining what you've raised over the years. And that's why I want to bring in the aspects of the revenue leakages. The fear is we have porous borders, and illegal trade along our borders is beginning to be a challenge for industry players. How are you working to deal with some of these loopholes that we have in the system?
Indeed, we have to admit that there are revenue leakages, but we also have very punitive sanctions to discourage recalcitrant traders. And when you are intercepted, you're slapped with a maximum penalty of 300%.
All right. Well, so the Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana, Samson Asaki Awingobid, has cautioned the plight of businesses at the ports will worsen. This follows the assent given by the President to the 3 tax measures passed by Parliament. Now, reacting to that, Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Michael Befi, says government's intention is not to collapse businesses. Take a listen.
you know that government's current interest is to promote a policy that is seriously pursuing earnest. I'm talking about the policy of import substitution. I mean, clearly, government's intention is to encourage businesses that originate from Ghana, and for that matter, we were able to grow these businesses to become anchor businesses one day. That's exactly what government is pursuing now. So I guess maybe the situation that is happening is as a result of the fact that a lot of Ghanaians have now ventured into manufacturing and they are producing more here. So it has declined exportation of such goods or similar goods that hitherto would have been exported to town. So that's exactly what is happening. But apart from that, note that government's intention is not also to cripple any business. Our intention is to encourage businesses to grow. That's what will make our country well. Hence, our intentions and motives are to encourage people to do business. We don't want to cripple you. So whatever we have brought in place as a result of trying to generate more revenue for the country is not to cripple businesses, but rather for government to get more money to develop the country.
You're watching The Marketplace. Time to talk tech. And Netflix, the global streaming giant, has recently announced plans to expand its operations in Africa following the success of its local content production ventures in the region. Now, that sounds exciting, and joining me to talk more about this is lead for Eyes of Africa, Henry Kobler. Good afternoon to you, Henry. So let's start off by telling us about the investments Netflix has made in Africa, its success, and this recent announcement to expand operations here.
Much, Daryl. So, Netflix has been a huge part of Africa's global, promotion in terms of our music industry and movie industry. And so definitely them doing a bit of more focus towards Africa has been a global success as well. Generally, if you're looking at what they've been able to do, helping to create or support about 12,000 jobs in Africa. If you're looking at some of the movie productions, high quality movie productions, and employing such of the talents within Africa, you're going to then realize that it's been a success if they actually having almost about 12,000 people and investing almost about $200 million in household jobs. That's really a good one in terms of the GDP towards movies in here. And then looking at how they're going to do it in terms of promotions, it's a good one. For me, my worry would really be how Ghana especially is really being targeted here and also being a beneficiary of this global phenomenon from such a global giant.
In a bit, but how would this plan to expand, further boost the company's operations, and what's in it for us here in Africa?
Africa has a lot of stories to tell. Lots of talent to relatively get into proper production in terms of telling some of these stories and ideas in movies. And so generally, if you're looking at it, we sort of poised and positioned in a very good place to tell a lot of amazing stories. If you're looking at stories like the Black Panther and how basically it's actually churned out, it's been amazing. But how is Africa itself benefiting from that story? Not much. And so we have sort of a lot of stories from cultural dynamics to general lifestyles of Africans. And so that comes in terms of having to unleash the potential of young, talented filmmakers in Africa and writers in Africa. Definitely when there's this move to put in a lot of money in African movie, you're looking at quite a good one hitting our GDP in itself generally. And you're looking at how the quality of movies is also going to improve, because if you're looking at African movies, if you pick up a Kumawood movie, it really would never make a move onto a Netflix platform. But if you're looking at some level of investment coming in and the stories from the Ashanti region, the northern regions, generally if you're looking at the landscape in Ghana alone, that tells a lot of a lot of effort in the quality which is going to be produced and pushed out there enough. And we really can't necessarily have all the theaters and other things promised by the government, but if you're having such investment coming in, there are actually some level of progress coming in that regard. And I think that it's a good one for us, and we should be looking forward to it.
Well, I hear you about the quality of movies. You talk about the Kumawood, but I'm just concerned, doesn't this sort of stifle local initiative?
It does. I mean, but what is the local initiatives actually doing for themselves? Because the point is that there are stories to be told. Ghana movie industry is not getting the relevant support, regardless of the policies that are available. We have very good, amazing policies. I was talking to quite a number of people from the film authority side, and you can realize that we have the brains, we have the muscles, we sort of have the people enough to execute some of these, but generally, where is the money? Because the money is what goes into it to make sure that the quality of the production is high class enough that if somebody is sitting in the US, he gets a very good impression of Africa. Nigeria had these policies, and they are making deliberate efforts on the financial side to basically push this. And that's why you have a lot of Nigerian and South African movies on Netflix. It's because of money. And so you need the money to put in to get the quality. The stories are amazing. The way we tell the stories are amazing. We can do a good job with that. The policies are amazing, but we need the money. And so local initiatives could come in relatively, but we think that the partnerships could be the point where they could be looking at. The proper partnerships between local initiatives and foreign ones. I think that we actually do a better work.
The policies are amazing, but we need the money. That's my takeaway from our conversation. Henry Kobler, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. There you go. Economy expands by 3.1% in 2022. You can read more about that, myjoyonline.com/business. My name is. Thanks for watching. We will be back same time tomorrow.